So the question is, does this matter? So today we're going to answer the question, does brewer shape, size matter when it comes to pour overs? I picked out my 3 favorite pour over devices. We've got the wonderful classic Hario V60. We've got the Orea V3, which is my favorite flat bottom brewer. It's really nice, really fast. And then the Cafec Deep 27, which is just really fun, great for super small cups of coffee and even more normal sized cups of coffee. So the question is, does this matter? Does the difference in shape, the difference in size, really make that much of a difference in what we taste at the end of the day? My goal for this video is to brew 3 cups of coffee with each of these brewers. Hopefully we'll keep as many variables consistent as we can. I guess the goal is to make the tastiest brew we can make with each of these brewers. Hopefully we'll taste all of these side by side, and blindly I'll be able to pick out the differences and confirm that shape, size does matter. But we will see about that. Let's get to grinding some coffee. For our coffee, we have this Repose decaf from Methodical. One thing I love about this coffee is the really intense sweetness that you get. It's just really special when you find a decaf that just like knocks your socks off. This is one of those. It is produced by Sebastian Ramirez. You definitely get some funk out of this one. And like I mentioned, just incredibly sweet. Like really heavy on the brown sugar, molasses, you know, those really dark sugar notes. We're gonna be grinding with our Comandante on, I believe we have this set at 27 clicks. You don't wanna be grinding too fine with decafs. They are more prone to clogging paper filters and just a lot easier to pull more out of them than you'd really want to. For these 3 different brewers, I am gonna use different dosages. Like I mentioned, I do wanna keep as many variables, you know, consistent as we can. However, with the different sizes of these brewers, I do believe the optimal dose is going to be pretty different between each one. For the V60, my normal recipe is just 15 to 250. We're going to kind of stick with that. I'm going to probably dose only about 12 grams in the Orea here. It's a smaller brewer. It does really well with that. And then where this brewer really shines, the Deep 27, is with really small doses. So it goes, you know, I've seen people do as low as 6. That's a little low for me. I prefer like, you know, nothing really lower than 8, just because the bed depth gets, even in this, it gets pretty shallow there. But I think we're gonna do 10 here because that's just a good kind of middle of the road spot for this brewer. Here we go, we're gonna grind 37 grams of coffee. For decaf coffees, I usually do use a little bit lower water temperature. Just again, like we're not trying to push extraction as much with decafs just because there's not as much to extract. A lot of the soluble, you know, material has been removed in the decaffeination process. Also, with this being like a heavier processed coffee that's a little more funky, taking a little bit less from the coffee can result in something that's a little more pleasant. Our water is about 200 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 93 something Celsius. One thing I wanted to keep consistent through these is paper filters. We can't be completely consistent because I don't have any of the V60 Abaca filters, but I do have these T90s from Cafec, and they are very, very similar to the Abaca, which I do have for the Deep 27 here. And I'll show you a cool way that we can actually fold these V60 filters to fit the Orea. We are going to do a 1 bloom, 1 pour recipe pretty much for all of these. We might end up doing some extra pours when it comes to this guy though, just because this guy's so fast. I'm going to try to get through this fast, but as I'm brewing these, I do want to talk about what I like about each brewer and why these are my 3 favorites. These are like my 3 desert island pour over devices. All right, I'm gonna make a little divot in the middle here, just because of the shape of the V60. That's just gonna help us get a good extraction, good bloom here. I'm gonna bloom with like around 40, I would say, grams of water. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. You know, I'm not super picky. Just wanna make sure we get all these grounds wet. And I'm pouring not super fast. You know, I'm not trying to agitate this a ton. We hit about 50 grams there. Make sure that kettle stays warm. And I'm gonna let this go, let's say 45 seconds. That should be pretty good. All right, it's hit 45 seconds. We're gonna go ahead and pour the rest. You know, little circles in the center. This is like a very simple, hard to mess up recipe, which is why I chose it for this. I'm not trying to do anything fancy, you know, just literally trying to make something consistent that I can, you know, do with multiple brewers here. 250. So there we go. I might give this a swirl if it looks like it's just like drawing down way too fast, almost like purposely clogging the filter a little bit. But right now we're at 150, and I might just give it a little shake just to even out the bed there, but I'm not like swirling hard or anything, because it looks like we're drawing down. It looks like we'll probably finish, my guess is around 230. We'll see here. Keep watching it go down. And actually it did slow down a little bit there towards the end. We ended about 247. So this is, you know, right on par with what I want in most of my brews. Yeah, we're gonna just set this to the side. We're not gonna taste yet. So the next brewer here is our flat bottom contestant. And this is the Orea V3 as mentioned. Flat bottoms are a little more forgiving in terms of like your pouring. They're a lot harder to mess up. So I'm gonna show you how I fold these filters too, just really quickly. So like I said, this is the T90 Cafec V60 filter. I'm just gonna fold that. Kind of takes some, you know, care, if you will, to get this to sit right. Push it in here with both my hands and let these creases kind of naturally form. Just let it fold over until we have something that sits in here fairly neatly and is pressed up against the sides. Doesn't have to be perfect. So as mentioned, only 12 grams in this brewer, just because that is a dose that I use with this, and it works extremely well. You know, with this experiment, we're kind of seeing if there's any big differences between brewers. Typically with a flat bottom brewer like this, you will get more sweetness, more body, and a little bit less acidity out of your brews than something like a V60. So how much, you know, is the recipe and how much is the actual brewer? That's kind of what we're finding out right now. Let's see here, just want to make sure we get all the coffee wet. You know, we're about 33 grams. We'll let that go for another 45 seconds. Make sure our kettle stays warm. This coffee smells so sweet. It's like, it's also got some like strawberry or raspberry notes. Definitely like red berries, but almost reminds me of like a candied strawberry. I don't even think I've ever eaten a candied strawberry now that I say that, but I imagine that's what a candied strawberry would taste like. This is draining really fast, I will say. So I don't think I'll break up the pores, but I might give it a good healthy swirl just to keep this from going way too fast and the water just running straight through. All right, we just hit 200 grams total. Give this a good swirl. Nothing crazy actually, because it is slowing down just a hair, I've noticed. We're about finished up at 240, 245, yeah, 245, so nothing crazy. So the Cafec Deep 27 here is our last pour over device in this test that we're doing. This is one of my favorite brewers of all time. The coolest thing about this is that it allows you to brew incredibly small cups of coffee, still maintain a decent bed depth. Bed depth is really important to get a good extraction. It's really difficult to extract tiny coffee bed because you're just gonna pour, your water's just gonna go straight through it. You want your water to go through the coffee, and then that coffee water that you've created to go through more coffee, and that coffee water to go through more coffee, you know, to extract the good stuff. Really the best filter for your coffee is the coffee itself, better than any paper filters, if that makes any sense at all. We'll do a similar bloom here. We got only 10 grams in the pour over, so we'll do, you know, 20 to 30. We'll try to
get all the coffee wet in that amount.
I gave that a little shake because with this brewer, a lot of times you get like a pretty noticeable crater in the middle after the bloom. And just giving that a shake just levels the bed. Also, I'm not really worried about stalling the brewer because this thing is gonna run fast no matter what. I might break this up into 2 pours though. We'll see how fast it's running because I don't want this to just, I don't want to just run our water through the coffee. I'm not gonna let this drain all the way down before I start my second pour, but just gonna give it a little bit of time and then we're gonna pour. 165, it's about right. We'll let that drain. All right, drawdown finished at 240, so pretty similar there. It's really nice to have this just to be able to just try a little bit at a time of really expensive coffees and really stretch your bags. If you're like me, I don't really enjoy drinking 250 milliliters of coffee, multiple times a day. Sometimes I have multiple coffees that I want to try. So it's really nice to be able to brew a small brew like this and really just get a great cup of coffee. Hopefully temperature wise, they're all similar. That could play a role here. I wish, this is not a perfect experiment. Pour roughly the same amount so I'm not cheating whenever I get Madison to come mix these up. Madison, may I call upon you? Mix them up however you like. Wow, that's really good. Incredibly balanced. It's gonna be hard to beat this one. I get a little bit of acidity. However, that one's got an incredible body to it. Really round, really sweet. Very good. There's a little something on the finish that I'm not sure about. Like maybe the extraction's a little high on this one. For this particular coffee, it almost just feels like there's just a little bit of like a chalky cocoa on the finish that I'm not sure if I enjoy, but we'll try this next one here. Okay, very similar. However, less body for sure. That little chalky like cocoa thing on the finish is gone. Let me go back to the first one. This one, the first one's still juicier, which is interesting. However, this one is, I don't know what the word is, maybe more approachable. Like it's not as intense. I really enjoy both, like honestly, for different reasons. But this second one definitely feels a little lighter in body, a little higher in acidity. I'm pretty confident that this is probably either the Orea or the Deep 27, and this is probably the V60. I'm like 99% sure this has got to be the V60. Lastly, interesting. This is my least favorite out of the 3, actually. And part of it is aroma, actually. Yeah, like these two are sweeter on the aroma, which this one is a little bit warmer. Could be a temperature thing entirely, but all of these have cooled down to like a good drinking temperature, probably 130 degrees, plus or minus 5 degrees on all of these, I would guess. Yeah, so this one's, interestingly enough, tastes like the least like balanced extraction. Just got me thinking maybe this could be the V60 as well, just because there's a lot of acidity that really bites in almost a bad way. There's also a little bit of bitterness as well. It's like, it's just not as even as these two are. Yeah, much more even right here, much sweeter for sure. And then like juice, this is like straight juice right here. Then again, like, higher extraction, a little bit heavier, a little bit more on the finish. I'm pretty much gonna say Orea, higher extraction, more round, juicier. I can taste all that. V60 here. Very balanced, very good. But maybe just, you know, a little lighter in body than this first one. And then this last one, I've got to say, it's kind of disappointing me to say this because I didn't enjoy this one nearly as much, but I'm thinking this is probably the Deep 27. If that's the case, it really does break my heart because I love the Deep 27. I love the ability to brew these, you know, smaller cups, but it also at the same time, it's like these were definitely better. And the differences are not super subtle. So before I even turn these around and reveal whether I was right or wrong, there are definite differences to these brewers. Size and shape do matter when it comes to pour over devices. So let me taste one more time and then I'll spin these around. I will say as this one cools down, before I even spin it around, it is getting better. It's getting a little less pointy, a little less aggressive, interestingly enough. The acidity is actually coming out more, but it's more of a pleasant acidity. It actually is one of the more acidic of the three. But I'm sticking with Orea V60 Deep 27. This is the Orea, in fact. This is the V60, in fact. So, yes, I was correct on all three. Very interesting experiment here. I knew there would be differences. I feel like in my heart of hearts, I knew we would see some difference, but I don't think I realized they would be this pronounced. There are, you know, definite differences between these cups. As far as a personal favorite, for this coffee, I gotta say the Orea probably wins. Just because I'm getting so much juiciness out of this. Like I mentioned, this coffee gives you a lot of brown sugar, dark sugar, like really sweet flavors, and the Orea is really highlighting that, I would say. It feels like I'm biting into like a fresh strawberry with this one, where this one, that feels more like, almost like a dried strawberry, if that makes any sense at all. Like not quite as juicy, or like a strawberry flavored tea, if you will. I don't have a refractometer. I wish I did, and I wish I could measure the extraction on all these to actually see, you know, a visual of what actually happened. It is possible that this one just extracted more and I could get a similar brew with the V60 if I changed my pour structure or maybe even ground a little bit finer. But obviously if we're changing grind sizes, we're just pulling way too many levers, and this is changing this, which is changing this, and then you get, you know, chasing your tail really quick. I still stand by the fact that these are my three favorites. The Deep 27, although it was my least favorite, there is no better way to brew a small cup of coffee. I will stand behind that. Not as good as these two, but it is delicious. And as it cools down, it's becoming more and more, you know, delicious, I would say. I think that if you were gonna choose three brewers for your arsenal, like your desert island, it'd be hard to go wrong with these three. Obviously, you know, everybody's taste is gonna be different. So you might enjoy, you know, flat bottoms way more than the V60. So your three desert island might be something like an Orea, and then maybe like something like the Trickle 8 here, because you want even more of that sweetness and you want to try a completely zero bypass brew. For me, this is fun to have and try every now and then, but zero bypass is not quite for me. There's no right or wrong answer. That's the fun part about this. Everybody's gonna enjoy something different. All right, just see which one's your favorite.
They're cold. That one.
That one's your favorite. We agree.
Well.
Yeah, go make some coffee. Have some fun. Also, don't be afraid to try these crazy bold decafs. I'm gonna finish this. See you later.